morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome along to the wilds of Suffolk. I'm out here yet again doing what I do, walking along in beautiful locations such as this, and giving you my thoughts on things that are happening in the world and the public consciousness. If it's your first time here, welcome. This is what I do. I hope you enjoy it. If you're a returning subscriber, all 1,209 of you today, welcome back. It is an honour and a privilege to have you join me for these walks, so thank you one and all for being here. Now, today I'm going to be tackling a subject that I've been told I'm not allowed to because I'm a man and it's got nothing to do with me. But I'm going to do it anyway because, as we've been told now and as we've been led to believe by people who are obviously bought into the narrative that we've all been told, that men can now have babies. So if that's the case, I now have an opinion. Wonderful. Thank you very much for letting me in. Now, let me start by saying this video is not about judgment. I'm not here to judge anyone. As I've said in many of my videos, I can't judge anyone because as soon as you have one finger pointing out to everybody else, you've got three pointing back at you. I have messed up more in my life than I've got right. So this isn't about judgment. This is about some numbers, facts, historical reference, and just trying to get a bit of a frame, and especially from a man's perspective of this issue, because believe it or not, it does take two people to get someone pregnant. So a man's perspective in this issue is important, I think. Now, as I say, no judgment, but you know, as I've also said in a lot of my talks, there is going to be a subject that I'm going to tackle. There's going to be something that I say that's going to upset you. Today could be the day. I'm not trying to. This is just about, because this is such a massive subject in the public consciousness right now, and that's based on a court case from some time ago called Roe v. Wade in the US, which is where this discussion is stemming from. So I'm going to give you a little bit of historical reference there, what it means, and try and sort of wade through the bullshit, and come to a place that maybe we can have an adult discussion about things rather than just screaming from the top of your lungs, "My body, my choice." Because if that was the case, we wouldn't have been having all the debates we had over the last 2 years about the things being stuck into people's bodies. And I'm not talking about a sexual reference. Not at this stage, but we will, don't worry. Okay, so, like I say, difficult subject to tackle, especially from a man's perspective, because obviously I'm a man and I can't carry a baby, apparently. But biologically I can't, but apparently I can if I have a... if I believe that I can, which is interesting, to say the very least. This is one of those subjects as well, as I walk through areas where there are people walking, I can see this is going to upset people and trigger people, so I might have to change the subject as we walk, because I'm not in the mood to start a fight today, or finish one, whichever way comes first. Now, okay, so where do we begin? Where do we begin with this subject? Roe v. Wade. Okay, let's start there. Now, for those of you keeping track on the things that are happening in the world, the discussion was started because of a decision that was not finalised in the Supreme Court of the United States on a subject, on a case that was from some time ago, I can't remember the year, Roe v. Wade, where it was the Supreme Court at the time decided that the government, the federal government, can't stand in the way of a woman wanting to get an abortion, which the Constitution said that the federal government couldn't get in the way of that. Okay, so as the law is never set, the same as science is never settled, okay, the law is not either, and it's all about interpretation and definitions, and new cases come before courts, and that is how precedents are set and how law is set, by cases being brought, and the decision of those cases then sets a precedent for future cases. Does that make sense? Case law, or I can't think what the other word is, but anyway, that's how it works. So when cases go through the court interprets the decisions through how the case is presented, and then they make a decision based on the way in the US the Constitution is written, how the wording is, and how they interpret that. So it's all about interpretation, which is one of the biggest issues we face in law, because it's all about interpretation. And as many words have different interpretations in law than they do in our everyday talk, everyday speech, that presents issues because the interpretation, people interpret one thing to mean one thing and another thing to mean another thing. Now, if you have a look at the Black's Law Dictionary, no, I'm not being racist, that's what it's called. The Black's Law Dictionary, there's some of the interpretations of words in there are not what you'd expect. Perhaps look up human in the Black's Law Dictionary. That's an interesting one. And also understand. Like, we all think that we understand, right? We all think we comprehend the word understand, right? We all think, do you comprehend? Do you get it? Do you? Understand in legal terms means, do you stand under me? Okay? But it's, like I say, definitions, interpretations, and this is the problem. We're all trying to interpret words, which is where, to go off on a little bit of a tangent here, things like smart contracts come in, because smart contracts don't take interpretations of words. It is a set criteria that once that criteria is met, then the smart contract is finalized. Okay, completely different subject matter, but just to give you a sort of a bit more of an idea of the broad spectrum of how law works and how smart contracts can solve that, because it takes away the interpretation of the words. Okay, now, so this case, the Roe v. Wade, set this precedent some time ago. I can't remember the date, I do apologise. That the funny thing about that case was that the woman in the case on her deathbed admitted that the only reason she went ahead with the case is because she was paid to do so, and she never went ahead with abortion anyway. Okay? Now, this is, there was a new case that was brought before the Supreme Court, and they were talking about the decision. There was a summary decision that was released, not a final decision. That there was the summary decision said that the federal law, we have to take a step back, I do apologise. A step back meaning, in the United States, it's called the United States of America. Now that means that each state has its own laws and its own representatives that represent the state. And then the federal government oversees those. So the federal government doesn't dictate to the states. The states individually dictate to the federal government. Does that make sense? Okay, so that case in particular said that the federal government couldn't stand in the way of a woman's right to have an abortion. All right? Now, this summary judgment, that the new one that everyone started losing their minds over because it was released, it shouldn't have been released. For the first time in 170-year history of the Supreme Court of the United States, it was leaked out to the press before it was ready to go, before there was even a final judgment. So that's never happened before. And it's happened now because obviously America's coming up to an election year, and the more controversy and the more we can rile people up, then it angers people to vote a particular way, which is how politics is usually done in America. You know, every 4 years there's always massive riots and things when the elections are on. This isn't a presidential election. This is a midterm election, they call it. So the United States, the politics over there is a little bit different from most places in the world. So you have to sort of have a bit of a background into how things work there. Sorry, I'm just putting my bike through. How things work there, to have an understanding of what this means and how it all comes together. Now, so what this summary judgment says is that it's not up to the federal government to decide, it's up to the states. So rather than having the Supreme Court of the United States, which is federal, make a decision on what the states should do, they're pushing it back to the states. So the states are in control of their own laws. Now, each of the states have different laws. Some permit, others do not. Now, you have some states like California and New York have already passed abortion laws into their state, and their abortion laws are that a child can be aborted up until birth, including up until the contractions start, or even possibly after. Okay? Now, it's it is up to the people of those states to decide how they want to be governed in those states, and about you know, the state governments have to work with the will of the people. That's how governments are supposed to work. So if the people for any reason decide that their governance doesn't govern them properly anymore, then they can then vote them out. Afternoon, how are you doing? Strolling along, talking to myself. So that's why it goes back, rather than being a federal issue, it goes back to the state issue. Now, if people decide that they want to live in a state where that's legal, where abortion is legal, then they can move to one of those states. It's not an issue, and that's perfectly legal there. Other states, they decide that they don't want that, then it's within their rights. If the people of that state decide that they don't want that, then the people of that state have that law in their state. Agree with it? Disagree with it? That's how it works. That's the way that the laws work in the United States. Okay? Now, we have to go back and have a little bit of historical reference to tie all this together. Okay. So, the main abortion clinics are a group called Planned Parenthood in the United States. There's different places around the world have different agencies. You know, here in the UK, similar sort of thing. In Australia, sort of similar sort of thing. Now, the Planned Parenthood is funded by the federal government. Okay, but strangely, Planned Parenthood donates to political parties every year that support their mission of supplying women's birth control, they call it. Okay, and they make political donations, usually to the Democrat Party, almost exclusive to the Democrat Party. But they're getting federal funding, and then they're using that federal funding to then donate back to a political party. So, makes perfect sense. Afternoon, how are you doing? So, we have that political joinder there, but let's go a little bit further. It was originally set up by a woman called Margaret Sanger. Now, Margaret Sanger is an interesting character. And as I've said many, many times, don't believe what I say. I want you to go and look for yourself and do your own research, as I always say. Now, but even though we're told we shouldn't do our own research because you're not qualified. Margaret Sanger is an interesting character in that she was about 100 years ago, I think. And she... Well, almost the majority of these Planned Parenthood locations are located in black neighbourhoods. And that's no accident, because Margaret Sanger was famous for saying, black people are like weeds, and we need to do everything we can to cut down their numbers. I mean, okay. Now, another high-profile person that was on the board for a lot of their adult life of Planned Parenthood was Bill Gates' father. Bill Gates' father, who was a known eugenicist. Now, eugenicist is much like the Nazis were doing in World War II. The Nazi mantra was, we get to decide who lives and who dies. You know, they had this whole... you know, the frail and disabled and elderly should be killed to make the way for the young, strong Aryan race. Okay? Eugenics. So the eugenics is deciding who lives and who dies, who's worthy of life. So these eugenicists, Margaret Sanger was one, and Bill Gates' father was one, and Bill Gates as well. Okay? Now listen to Bill Gates when he does his TED Talks. As I say, don't listen to me. Go and look for yourself. Do your own research. If you know how to use a computer, but we're told that that's racist. And only white people know how to use computers, so for my black audience, I do apologise, but it's ridiculous. So, a little history of Planned Parenthood. You know, it was set up by a woman called Margaret Sanger, wanted to wipe out black people because she thought they were like weeds. And eugenicist, obviously, and Bill Gates' father was also on the board of Planned Parenthood for a long, long time. Okay? Just a little bit of historical reference. Now, how best to tackle this next bit. All right. The argument that I hear is, well, it's not a child until it's born. Okay? In a lot of countries, if a pregnant woman is killed for whatever reason, let's just say a pregnant woman is murdered, it's counted as a double homicide. Okay? So in legal terms, if a pregnant woman is murdered, it's counted as a double homicide. But we're told that it isn't a child until it's born. Okay? Now, I'm not going to make a case for and against, I'm not going to... There are many, many reasons why abortion should be available and should be legal. I'm not trying to say that it shouldn't be. I'm trying to give you all sides of the story here to make an argument or have a discussion about the subject, but from a viewpoint where we take in all the different angles of consideration that we should be taking in. Okay? Now, anybody that studied any biology when you were in high school, obviously I didn't finish high school, so I'm not qualified to speak about anything apparently. But, my basic understanding of biology when I was at school, when you have a fertilized egg, it's called a zygote, and that then separates and divides and becomes 2 cells and then 4 cells and so on and so forth. Now, in that process, you have cells that are called stem cells. Now, I'm sure you've heard that term before, stem cells, stem cell research. Okay, now stem cells are interesting and exciting in the terms of science, because stem cells can become anything. So when you have the stem cells at this embryonic level, very, very small, a few cells, they can become anything. So they can become a brain, they can become a lung, a heart, or anything. Which means if you have a genetic condition, for instance, then you can use stem cells to reverse a genetic condition with using a stem cell that can be anything. So let's just say you've got a heart condition or a liver or a kidney condition or whatever it is. Using stem cell research, you could actually repair that because then it can become a liver or a kidney or whatever you want it to be. You with me? Okay. Now, why do I bring that up? It has been revealed through different sources. Project Veritas. If you've never heard of them, James O'Keefe. He does undercover reporting, so they have people that go and work at Twitter or go and work at Facebook, and they record interactions or meetings that they have with people that gives you an insight into the corporate thinking of those agencies, those organisations, and how they think and how the message that they want to push through their platform. Might be Facebook, it might be Twitter or whatever it is. And it gives you an insight into the thinking of those organisations through the lens of the person that is being recorded. So it's usually secret recordings, okay. So James O'Keefe had undercover reporters go in to Planned Parenthood meetings where Planned Parenthood was actually selling body parts of these aborted fetuses. Okay, now that's illegal. That's illegal, that should never be done. So it's, from their perspective, of course they want them to continue because it's a money-making exercise for them. You with me? Because obviously stem cell research and where's this research being done all over the world, especially in places like Ukraine, interestingly enough. So, like I say, stem cell research, very, very exciting, but where those stem cells come from is the question. And that's part of the question about how this all comes together and how it fits together and whether the moral implications of what we're doing should be considered, in addition to the scientific implications of what we're doing. Sorry, get up these stairs here. Afternoon, folks. How we doing? Sorry, I'm just going to talk to myself as I walk past. I hope I don't scare the birds off. So this discussion, obviously, when you're talking about moral and ethical arguments for and against, these things have to be taken into consideration. Now, if, like the argument I'm going to hear is, but if someone's going to abort the fetus, then it doesn't matter what happens to it anyway, right? Right? Now, where we have an issue, well, one of the issues, let's put it that way, one of the issues is that I don't want to put all this at the feet of women, because it doesn't belong there. Now, from a man's perspective, this is where my perspective, my input is relevant, I think. Men have to start taking responsibility for what they do. They don't, because as I've said before, it takes two to tango. The only way a woman can get pregnant by herself is with a turkey baster. And if she's going to be doing that, then why would she want to abort the fetus in the first place, right? So men, any men listening to this, take some responsibility for your penis and what comes out of it. And if you're not going to do that, then if you're going to put it all on the women, then that's not right. Now, as I've stated many, many times, I'm a proponent for sex. How can I put it better? I love it. I think it's great. I think it's wonderful. I think it's an incredible, passionate thing that we share together with two loving, agreeable adults. Well, maybe three if that's what you're into. Whatever, don't care. As long as there's no children involved, that's fine by me, whatever you do. I don't care what you do in your bedroom. That's your bedroom. It's got nothing to do with me and nothing to do with anybody else. Okay? But where I take offence, and I do, it's massively offending to me. I know men personally who say, oh, I picked up this girl last night, went back to her place, yeah, we got on all night. I'm like, do you wear a condom? No, bugger that, man. I'm like, what if she gets pregnant? Not my problem. Not my problem. Right? How is it not your problem? How is it not your problem? I don't like condoms. I think they're horrible. It's like having a shower with your raincoat on. Why? It's horrible. It's horrible. But what's the preference? Do you do that and possibly get someone pregnant? Now, I have, like I said, I've messed up more times in my life than I can care to count. I've had unprotected sex many times. I've been to crazy parties. And I'm talking some really off-the-wall stuff. I'm not making excuses, and I'm certainly not apologising for it, and I'm not proud of it, but I've done all sorts of crazy shit. I've had a pretty interesting different life that isn't always agreeable to everybody. Afternoon, how are we doing? Just walking along talking to myself. That's what I do. Yeah, enjoy, have a great afternoon. So my life has been outlandish, let's put it that way. It's been crazy, and I don't like condoms, and I don't but I'm selective. I don't just put my penis anywhere, but at the same time I don't just share my seed with anyone either. Okay, I have 3 children that were planned, two with my current wife and one with a former partner, who my oldest daughter, 29 years old, who has 4 children of her own. It's I've made those decisions that I've taken on in my life, and we all have to make those decisions, and then we live with the consequences of those decisions. Sorry, just going to go over this side. But a lot of people won't, and they don't, and they refuse to, and that's the tragedy that we all have to befall. Afternoon, how are we doing? Just talking to myself. Why not? Yeah. Have a great afternoon. The problem is that people who don't want to take responsibility for their actions and want to blame other people, who just want to and don't think about the consequences of their actions. Let's put it that way. Now, this is where we get to the point where it seems like it's judgment. It's not. It really isn't. But we need better education about how we approach this subject, especially with children. Because it's easy to get caught up in the moment of passion and, yada, yada, yada. But we also have to understand the times of the month that people can get pregnant. Now, There's many methods you can use to stop somebody get pregnant. I'm addressing this to men here, you know, because men, you need to take some responsibility for your actions. You know, many methods you can use so that you don't get someone pregnant. You know, if a lady's having a period, the chances of her getting pregnant are almost zero, okay? And for about 2 weeks after. But that's not a 100% method either. Okay, if a female wants to be on a contraceptive pill, you have to understand that is going to change her hormones of her body. Okay, that has to be taken in consideration as well. There are ways that men can have, I think there's a male pill as well now, and you can also have a vasectomy if you don't want to get someone pregnant. But how many men do that? Because, you know, that can be reversed, by the way. I wouldn't do it. I'm not about to, that's not my bag. But it is, there's options available, but that's the thing. It's all placed firmly on one partner rather than the other. Afternoon, how are we doing? Busy through here today. So the thing is that all that responsibility is put on one partner rather than both, and that's not right. Now, the education of our youth is important, because a lot of abortions happen with younger people because, you know, as I say, you get caught up in the moment. It's easy to make mistakes and easy. The other thing I've spoken about at length with people is the withdrawal method. So people say, oh, that doesn't work because of pre-ejaculate. I'm like, okay. Okay. So you don't know when you're going to come? Is that what it is? I'm not sure what it means, but okay, I'm listening. But there's none of this is taught. You know, we've been taught all sorts of crazy stuff. And I mean, if some of the things that the kids are being taught nowadays are absolutely insane. You know, that you can, you know, if you're a boy, you can be a girl just because you think you are. That's taught, but we're not taught about, you know, how to prevent pregnancies in youngsters. Now, by the numbers, for every 1,000 live births, approximately in the US, there's 200 abortions. So 20% of people that get pregnant abort their fetus in America. And we're talking about, you know, about 1 million babies a year get aborted in the US. Now, a little bit more historical reference before we finish, because I don't want to go too long. We all look back at ancient cultures, civilizations, the Mayans, for instance, that were sacrificing children to their god. Oh, there's a light in the sky, we have to sacrifice people. We all look back at that and we think, how primitive those people must have been to think of making a sacrifice of a child. And it is a child. Making a sacrifice of a child to anything. We think how primitive, how cruel and unusual and strange, and what's wrong with that culture that would do that. But here we are, doing those same things in the supposed enlightened culture that we live in nowadays. Are we really enlightened if we're taking that many healthy fetuses and killing them? Now, as I've said, there's multiple reasons why that should be there and legal and available. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be. I'm not saying that that it shouldn't be available, and there's plenty of reasons why babies should be, if there's, you know, malformations or deformations, or if their mother's in danger, or there's lots of reasons why abortion should be available, and it is. But to use it as a birth control method is not right. I think we can all agree on that. But when you see these protesters are out in the street, I don't know, you know, who would get them pregnant, to tell you the truth. I mean, you know, just casting judgment, I'm sure. But the protesters are out in the street and they're proud. I've had 6 abortions and I'm happy. The majority of people that have had abortions, and I've been there with people who have, you know, upset by it because they realise what they're doing, and it's, you know, they don't have an option, you know. But, you know, the very, very small minority of the loudest people, they get the voice. They get their voice. They're the ones that broadcast into the world, and that is told to us that that's the normal attitude that we should all have. That is nothing. It's not a baby. There's no life there until it's born. That attitude is completely wrong. And if we can't even have a discussion about that and how we can prevent possibly some of these abortions or some of these pregnancies that lead to abortions, then we are screwed as a society. That's my viewpoint. You know, if we're looking back at these ancient cultures and we say, how dare you sacrifice all these children to your god or whatever, Moloch, are we really that much better off now? Have we lost our humanity? Have we lost our moral compass? What do you think? What's your thoughts on this? Because it is a difficult subject, and like I say, there's no judgment in this. But what's your thoughts? Drop them in the description box, not in the description box, in the comment section, because I'd love to hear what you have to say. Men, women, I don't mind, and I'm not trying to be argumentative. If you've got an opinion, please feedback, because that's how we start conversations, and we get to solutions rather than constantly arguing with each other about nonsense that we see on the television. So, tricky subject today. I hope I've done it some justice. I hope you've enjoyed what I've done. Well, not enjoyed, but you know what I mean. Yeah, it's one of those sticky ones, but I've got some more conversations upcoming. Atlantis is still coming. I'm still finalising the research on that. I think you're going to find that very interesting. So stick with me. Hopefully you will. Hopefully I don't lose too many subscribers for this talk today, but it is what it is. If we can't have discussions about it, especially like all sections of the population, including men, then where are we? All right. So go out into the world, do good, be good. You can change the world with the way that you talk, the way that you think, and the way that you interact with each other. If you do that, we can change the world. So look after yourself, look after each other. Thank you all for being here. Love you all. And I look forward to seeing you real soon. Take care. Ciao for now.